How to emotionally detach before divorce. This video is not about saving a marriage. It is about preventing psychological damage before divorce. When a relationship has become emotionally unviable, but attachment remains active, the mind does not remain neutral. It adopts. Prolonged attachment in a collapsing marriage leads to emotional distortion, progressive identity erosion, and personality changes that are difficult to reverse. This is not a motivational discussion, it is a clinical separation process. The goal is not emotional numbness, the goal is psychological integrity. Now we begin. Attachment continuing after viability loss reduces damage. Attachment persists beyond psychological viability. Many individuals remain emotionally attached even after the marriage has clearly crossed the point of viability. At this stage, attachment no longer serves bonding, it serves internal destabilization. Clinically prolonged attachment here produces chronic anxiety, impaired judgment, and gradual personality deformation. What once felt like love begins functioning as a psychological liability. Why it happens? Attachment systems resist deactivation. Attachments system prioritized continuity over accuracy and stability over truth. When a relationship becomes harmful, the system does not disengage in tightness. Prolonged activation under threat restores perception and emotional flexibility. What you can do: viability recognition statement, 20 seconds. State internally once. This relationships no longer supports psychological stability. Do not debate the statement. Do not soften it. Register it. Why this works? The nervous system disengages only after viability is consciously withdrawn. As long as attachment is framed as protective, it remains active. Correct classification initiates withdrawal. What you have learned: attachment beyond viability becomes harmful. Prolonged attachment causes emotional distortion. The system resists disengagement under threat. Viability must be consciously withdrawn. Accurate labeling begins separation. Emotional reactivity means regulation is still external. Mood remains regulated by the spouse. When emotional reactivity continues, the internal state remains externally controlled. This produces hypervigilance, self suppression, and emotional dependency. If uncorrected, personality narrowing follows. Why it happens? Chronic external regulation. Long term emotional outsourcing teaches the nervous system to abandon self regulation. When separation begins, the system responds with anxiety and compulsive monitoring. Prolonged exposure reshapes emotional response patterns. Action, regulation, ownership rule. 30 seconds. Internally define this boundary. My emotional state is no longer regulated by this person. Each time reactivity appears, repeat the boundary once. No engagement. What it will do: ownership of regulation interrupts dependency loops. Without repeated external calibration, the nervous system begins restoring internal balance. Key points: emotional reactivity indicates attachment, external regulation creates dependency, separation triggers regulation panic, boundaries restore autonomy, early correction prevents deformation. Rumination hardens attachment instead of dissolving it. Thinking maintains emotional proximity. Persistent thinking maintains contact internally. Rumination does not process attachment, it consolidates it. Over time, this produces obsessive loops and reduced cognitive flexibility. Why it happens? Repetition is mistaken for resolution. When emotional resolution is unavailable, The brain substitutes repetition for contact. Familiarity is misread as progress. Cognitive disengagement rule 22nd. When rumination begins, state, this thought is not corrective. Disengage without replacement. Why this works? Attachment circuits weaken only when reinforcement stops. Mental disengagement prevents further consolidation. Summary: rumination reinforces attachment. Repetition hardens emotional bonds. Familiarity replaces healing. Disengagement stops consolidation. Mental distance enables separation. Identity fusion makes detachment feel like self loss. Separation feels like internal collapse. When identity is merged with the marriage, detachment produces emptiness rather than relief. This is not grief alone. This is identity erosion. Why it happens? Identity compression for survival. Over time, autonomy is reduced to preserve the relationship. Preferences mute, boundaries dissolve, the self loses independent structure. Microaction. Identity re anchoring. 30-second. Ask once, what part of me existed before this relationship? Do not elaborate. Locate it. Why this works? Identity fragments re emerge through recognition. Even minimal anchoring reduces fusion. Summary: identity fusions causes self loss. Separation exposes emptiness. Autonomy erodes quietly. Recognition restores structure. Identity expansion supports detachment. Intermittent positivity rewires attachment, not hope. Brief warmth reverses progress. Small positive interaction trigger regression. A calm tone, a familiar moment. These feel meaningful but are clinically destabilizing. Why it happens? Unpredictable reward sensitization. The brain responds more intensely to unpredictable rewards. Dopamine spikes reinforce attachment more strongly than consistent pain. A small action. Pattern supremacy rule 25-second. When positivity occurs, state one moment does not outweigh the overall pattern. No amplification, no suppression. Why this works? Meaning assignment sustains attachment. Removing predictive meaning weakens reinforcement. Intermittent positivity strengthens attachment. Unpredictable rewards intensify bonding. Moments do not signal change. Patterns overrides instance. Neutral meaning stabilizes detachment. Delayed detachment produces long-term psychological cost. Waiting increases damage. When detachment is postponed, the psyche adopts in unhealthy ways. Emotional rigidity develops. Trust distorts. Future bonding capacity declines. Why it happens? Adaptation under chronic threat. Survival adaptation emerge to tolerate prolonged instability. Over time, these adaptations harden. Detachment cost statement 22nd. State once. Delayed detachment increases psychological cost. No delay after recognition. Why this works? Early disengagement limits maladaptive restructuring. Timing matters clinically. Summary: delay increases damage. Chronic threat reshapes personality. Survival adaptation harden. Early disengagement preserves integrity. Times determines recovery. Detachment is maintained by consistent behavior. Detachment is treated as a feeling. Many wait to feel detached before acting detached. This reverses the process. But why? Emotion is mistaken for authority. Emotions feel urgent but do not indicate correctness. Behavior determines emotional outcome. Micro action. Consistency declaration 20 seconds. State once. I will behave according to separation, not according to feeling. No debate. Why this works? Behavioral consistency retrains emotional circuits. Attachment weakens when reinforcement stops. Detachment is not a feeling. Waiting delays progress. Behavior precedes emotion. Consistency retrains attachment. Stability emerges over time. This video was not about saving a marriage. It was about how to emotionally detach before divorce without losing psychological integrity. Attachment that continues beyond viability does not preserve love, it preserves damage. The mind does not remain unchanged when it stays bonding to what is no longer safe. It adopts in ways that quietly distort identity, judgment, and emotional range. Detachment is not cruelty, it is containment. At a certain point, continuing attachment is no longer patience, it is participation in internal erosion. Psychologically, integrity is preserved not by waiting, not by hoping, but by accurate separation. And accuracy is the most responsible form of care.